I'm in Israel now. That means you have an alert on your phone and you have to run for shelter. How can somebody who's going through something like that handle that?
Our brain, at an unconscious level, is wired for protection and survival and defense, and will perceive the world as more dangerous than it actually is. That also is why we get so many of these modern chronic diseases.
I'm a mom. I have to be here for my son, for my sister, for my elderly mom who just went through something, for everybody. I can't afford getting out of my body. I need to be here and I need to be present.
We try to rest, but still our brain is stuck in chronic anxiety. You can influence the course of your disease or your condition. There are 3 stages to healing from any chronic condition. The first stage is
Hi and welcome to the show. This is Orion. Thank you so much for being here today. I have with me Ashok Gupta. Is an internationally renowned speaker, filmmaker, health practitioner who has dedicated his life to supporting people through chronic illnesses and achieving their potential. Ashok suffered from ME or chronic fatigue syndrome around 25 years ago when he was studying at Cambridge University. Through neurological research that he conducted, he managed to get himself 100% better. He then set up a clinic to treat others and then published the well-known Neuroplasticity Limbic Retraining Recovery Program and app known as the Gupta Program in 2007. He has published several medical papers, including randomized controlled trials on long COVID, ME, CFS, and fibromyalgia, showing that the treatment is effective, and he's continually researching these conditions. I really enjoyed my conversation with him. We talked about the Gupta program, his program, how he helps so many people heal their chronic diseases without any devices, just with some tools through his program. We talked about my personal stress with the current war in Israel and how can you handle extreme stress when you're in a bomb shelter and you hear explosions. It's not like your everyday stress. So what do you do? What can we do to handle any anxiety, perceived or real? Because a perceived anxiety feels like real anxiety in the body, in the rhythm of your heart rate, in your own internal world. And he gave amazing advice on handling it, and it was just a pleasure to talk to. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Ashok, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Orion, for the invitation. So excited to be able to speak to you.
Yeah, and I'm excited to be speaking to you because I love to learn about how the brain works, and what we thought about brain function 10 years ago, 20 years ago is completely different than what we are discovering these days. But before we begin, how did you become so fascinated with the brain and neuroplasticity?
Yeah, so my journey started many, many years ago in the late 90s. So I was studying as an undergrad at Cambridge, and I was living, life to the full. I was burning the candles at both ends, like many students do, not looking after my health so much, etc. And I got some kind of virus, and I didn't know what that virus was, but I didn't think much of it. I had stomach issues, flu, etc. And the virus seemed to go away, but my health became worse and worse and worse. That I felt exhausted, fatigued, brain fog, couldn't think clearly. And I didn't know what was happening. And if people don't understand what that feels like, it was like, imagine your worst day of flu times 5. That's how exhausted my body felt. I felt pain, headaches, and I would go to doctor, and they would say, we don't know what you have. We don't know what causes it. You might have this thing called chronic fatigue syndrome, but we don't know. And you might have this forever. Goodbye. And that started my lifelong quest to try and understand what causes these types of very mysterious chronic diseases, like chronic fatigue syndrome, like long-term pain, like long COVID. We know lots of people who have long COVID. And I did some research, and it was one poignant moment when I was in a bookstore in Cambridge, and there was one book coming off the shelf, and it just called to me, and I picked that book off the shelf, and that book was called The Emotional Life of the Brain by Professor Joseph Ledoux. And that book, as soon as I read it, I was like, aha, this is the reason I'm feeling all these crazy symptoms. And I then went on to retrain my brain when I realized I think this is a disorder of the brain. Retrained my brain, got 100% well, and then set up a clinic to treat others. And then we were the first neuroplasticity program to publish in 2007, where we published the Gupta Program. And ever since then, we've now done 7 clinical studies to show that this type of brain retraining is really effective for a whole range of different chronic conditions. In fact, we think probably 50% of the illnesses that someone goes to see a doctor for are actually neuroplasticity issues that can be solved through brain retraining.
Wow. What was the most phenomenal discovery in the last years, from the time you started the program until today?
I think the most interesting finding is that the brain ultimately cares more about our survival than our well-being. So a lot of the challenges we have in life, in modern life, that especially right now in the world, come down to a very fundamental thing, which is that our brain at an unconscious level is wired for protection and survival and defense, and will perceive the world as more dangerous than it actually is in order to protect us. And that particular bit of knowledge is relevant at a psychological level, at a political level, at a military level, and then also at our health level as well. That one founding principle that our brain is wired for defense, for protection, for fear, essentially. And that also is a clue to why we get so many of these modern chronic diseases. And if we can tame the brain, if we can calm down these over-defensive responses, then our system can come back to balance, and we can focus on more of the natural emotions or feelings that we may have as human beings, of love, of empathy, of care, of connection. Because those more deep human emotions and experiences get clouded when we are in states of fear. And so harnessing the brain, training the brain is such a fundamental aspect of our whole development.
That's amazing. So what were the first steps you took for yourself that were proven to help you before you even started with your program?
I think the thing that in the late 90s really helped me was understanding that this is a software problem, not a hardware problem. Now, I'm a bit of an IT geek, so I love this analogy, but let me break that down for our listeners. You know, a lot of the problems that modern medicine treats, it treats it as if it's a hardware problem. So it says, okay, everything can be boiled down at the reductionist level to physical things wrong in my body at the biochemical level. So if I have depression, that is not because of my thinking, that is because the chemicals in the brain are somehow not at the right level. So we need to use antidepressants and SSRIs to change the chemical nature of our brain, and then somehow we're going to be relieved from our depression. So that's the classic reductionist medical model. And I realized that actually these kinds of illnesses, they are not hardware problems. They are software problems, in the sense of there's nothing wrong with the computer. There's nothing wrong with the physical hardware, but the software program is getting stuck, and it is getting into negative feedback loops. And that's what we need to retrain. And that's what I really discovered at the beginning. And then I started experimenting with different brain retraining techniques, because at that time, neuroplasticity and brain retraining didn't even exist as a discipline. And therefore, it was just practicing and seeing what worked. How did I stop my brain from going down certain pathways that were creating the symptoms, calming my immune system, calming my nervous system. And through this ad hoc practice, I managed to get myself 100% well.
Right. And if somebody doesn't know anything about your program, what does it look like to take the program? Does it involve neurofeedback or anything else?
So our program is very unique in the sense that there's no invasive devices, there's no neurofeedback, there's no kind of brain stimulation or vagus nerve stimulation. Instead, what our brain retraining program says is that there are three stages to healing from any chronic condition. The first stage is we need to learn to regulate our nervous system. So the first preparation for neuroplasticity is through breathing techniques, meditation techniques, relaxation techniques that we all know now. There's enough evidence behind this. We all know that that's a very important part of healing from anything. So the first stage is regulating the nervous system. Then the second stage is, the core of it is retraining the brain. And that's where we, in our videos and our app, we help patients learn these very specialized techniques. And it's very difficult to describe them, but they're not cognitive behavioral techniques. They're not psychotherapy. This is actually about training the brain, just like you learn to drive a car. Yeah. If you were just using cognitive techniques, you might say in your very first lesson, hey, I'm going to be really positive. I'm going to learn to drive this car. But until you actually practice moving the steering wheel, pressing the gas, you won't be able to learn to drive a car or learn to swim. So this is training our nervous system in a new practice through repetition, like learning a musical instrument. And that's what we help our patients learn, is to rewire their brain so their brain is no longer stuck in these old practices. And the way to think about this is, let's say somebody has the COVID infection, COVID-19 as an example. Now, most people, they get the COVID infection, their immune system kicks in, and then it goes back to normal once we fight off the virus. But in about 20 to 30% of people, we know that in the medium term, they seem to have lingering symptoms for many weeks. And for about a few percent of people, they actually go on to having long-term symptoms for months, if not years afterwards. Now, what is happening there? We believe it's very simple. The brain, when it is fighting off the virus, that is a life-threatening experience for the brain. We may take it for granted, but it's actually life-threatening. And so the brain, when it's taking a long time to fight off COVID-19, it gets stuck. It fights off the virus, but it thinks, what happens if the virus is still in my brain or still in my body? So then it goes into overdrive mode, over defensive mode, and keeps then stimulating the nervous and immune systems. And our program is then designed to train that nervous and immune system to come back to balance so that we no longer have the condition. And the third R of our program, as I said, delivered through videos and audios, is what we call re-engaging with joy. Now, what that means is that once you have retrained your brain is still sensitive for a while. So if you go back into normal life and start working 60-hour weeks, or you start pushing yourself too hard, your brain is going to go back into that danger mode, defensive mode, and start re-triggering these defensive responses, causing the symptoms. So therefore, learning your stress triggers, learning about your personality traits, learning about what stresses you is fundamentally important to maintaining long-term health. And what I'm describing, we are talking about chronic diseases such as chronic fatigue and long COVID and fibromyalgia, but we also treat people with PTSD. Well, not so much PTSD, but anxiety, burnout, chronic stress. Now, those are endemic in our population at the moment, but it's a similar principle that we might be stressed one day, but how does that stress on one particular day then turn into chronic anxiety when we try to rest, but still our brain is stuck in chronic anxiety? That is as a result of this training of the nervous system.
All right. That's amazing. Now, I'm in Israel now, and we have a war. That means like you have a beep, beep, beep alert on your phone, and then you got 3 minutes before the siren, and then woo, like super loud siren, and you have to run for shelter, right? And then you sit there in the shelter and you close your metal window and you close your door. And then you the building shakes like you actually hear the blasts. And then you hear that a building near your mom's building just collapsed from a missile. And so I'm like, I have a bunch of tools that I gathered throughout the years to calm down, and I'm listening to meditations. But when those things happen, my heart starts racing. How can I, or somebody who is in a chronic stress, I'm sure my stress is chronic because you go to sleep and a minute later you have to wake up and run to the safe room again. So even your sleep
Mhm.
is like you go to sleep, your heart is racing, and then like I'm almost falling asleep, and oh wait, we have to run, and yeah, like this is not pretend life threatening. This is life threatening. Period.
Mhm.
Plus, then you watch the news because you have to watch the news. You see the devastation. You hear the great leaders of the new world saying Tehran is gonna be on fire. Tel Aviv is gonna be on fire. Like everything is emphasized, and you do see the destructions. And even like my friend's parents just lost their home. They're safe, but people died and they're wounded. And
Mhm.
and in the living in Israel is really crazy because in between that you kind of try to lead a normal life um, to record a podcast, to connect with your friends, to organize play dates, all those
Mhm.
common things. Um, so for somebody who's going through something like that, or even what I know about the brain, that even perceived dangers, like you said, for the brain feels like real danger. It's not
Mhm.
whether we see it on the news or we experience it, just like the perceived danger when somebody scares you, that can linger and become chronic, I guess. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
what are some practical advice or things that someone can do in order to handle that?
Yeah. So, firstly, Orion, I really feel for you and your family and everyone there in the war. It's a very challenging situation. So, I really, am sorry to hear what you are going through, and for everybody else as well.
Yeah, and
And
one thing I want you to know, I know not many people know, but Israelis really like Iranian people. The problem is the extreme um, government they have there. But when Iranian and Israelis meet, they usually love each other, and unless they are extreme and they believe in a form of Islam that thinks that the Messiah is going to come if Israel be destructed, then
Mhm.
probably not so good friends. Um, but this is terrible on both sides. Like this is it's not good at all.
Of course. And I think
Yeah.
this is the important thing that you are emphasizing here. The difference between the politics and the people
Oh yeah.
is so, so
Huge.
important because if we brand a whole people as a reflection of the politics or the government there,
Mhm.
then we are losing our humanity, our shared humanity. And it's so important that we still learn that people are people. I travel the world. I'm sure you do as well. You meet so many different people, and you realize this, they are coming up with the same problems, the same challenges, the same human frailties that we all experience. We are one brotherhood or mankind, womankind,
Absolutely.
and we need to go beyond the politics and what separates us to just have that human empathy with what our fellow man and woman is going through right now, and then we can get beyond this. And so importantly, you've emphasized that we still love the people. It's not
Yeah,
about the people here.
it's not.
Um, and I see a lot of
My mom came from my mom was born in Tunisia. She came to Israel when she was 1, and during Nazi time, their Muslims friends were hiding them. There are a lot like between people. There is usually no war, but when it comes to brainwashing, dogma, and extreme religion, that's what's create a problem. But that's a part. Like this is a completely different topic. But for somebody who's going through that, no matter where they are in the world, what can we do?
yeah. Well, interesting. This is actually a very important part of what is going on and why we feel that anxiety is often because there's a sense of separation. So our political leaders try to create this sense of them and us, a sense of separation, which triggers the amygdala. The amygdala part of our brain is the part that creates that fear, that anxiety, that anger, that panic. And so when we are experiencing that, and as you say, in your situation, it's not even a perception. There is a real physical danger that is going on. So the brain is working correctly in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that once again, the brain can become overprotective. So it can magnify the sense of danger and then affect our health and stop us from thinking
Absolutely.
clearly.
I actually
Yeah.
like the 2 nights ago, I felt real physical pain in my chest. Physical
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
And I see everybody around me. Everybody is they try to be calm, but everybody's on edge.
Mhm.
I mean, it does. It keeps you like also everybody's sleep deprived, right? For a
Exactly.
few nights, like you have to wake up three, four times during the night with like
Mm.
super loud noises that affects people's brains too, like a sleep, of course. You don't
Exactly
have
right.
correct judgment.
So, what we know from these types of experiences that people have is to prevent the long term anxiety or stress or PTSD that can come from experiences, learning for us to actually calm our mind in the midst and the presence of what is going on is such an important thing. And of course, naturally, people will say, well, how can you do that when there's bombs going off and various things? It is about us finding what helps us ground ourselves and what helps us center ourselves in the midst of the storm. And I'd like to talk about the four pillars, the four things that we can do to support our mental and physical well being. Now, of course, the mind, so these four pillars, we call them, they stand for MEND, MEND, MEND. Yeah,
I
so
love
nice,
that.
easy, an acronym to remember. So M is for mind, the most important. So, in that regard, of course, the breathing and the meditation techniques are what we have found the most powerful way of being able to calm down in that moment. But in a moment, I'll share how that links with the other three factors. And so, sometimes when we're feeling the danger around us, our vibration, we become disembodied because being in the body feels scary. Being in the situation feels scary. So our anxiety, our consciousness actually starts vibrating outside of our body,
I
out here.
totally felt it. I totally felt it. Like
Yeah.
a couple of days ago, I felt it, and then I had to bring my awareness to the tip of my toes and to kind of mindfulness, feel my body because I'm a mom. I have to be here for my son, for my sisters here, for my elderly mom who just went through something, to be here for everybody. I can't afford getting out of my body. I need to be here and I need to be present.
Exactly. So I think the first step is for anyone in these situations is to recognize that it's likely you will try to dissociate from your body as a protective measure because it feels just too scary to be in your body. And that's what we want to counteract to a certain extent because that is a short term acute danger response, but it's not going to help you for weeks and weeks and weeks. You can't be
No, no,
dissociated.
I didn't stay there for long, but even for like
Mm,
I think it was like an hour where I was like, I caught
exactly.
myself. I was like, wait a minute, why don't you go play cards with your little one? What are you doing?
Exactly. So, what I would then recommend is for people to ground. So, this is literally putting your feet flat on the floor so that you are connected to Mother Earth, and then feeling like you have roots coming out of the bottom of your feet that are connecting you to the earth. And then, what we call progressive muscle relaxation is actually feeling your feet, then feeling your ankles and your legs and your torso, and body scanning so that you are feeling into your muscles. And each time you feel into your muscles, you take a deep breath in and breathe out. Yeah. So, first step is grounding your feet on the floor so you feel connected, and then observing the different muscles, breathing slowly and deeply. And that is then a preparation for meditation. So, many people don't realize this, but actually, the purpose of breathing is ultimately to take you to a deeper door of meditation. So we start with breath work to calm the mind and body, to reground, and then we go into kind of guided meditation or our own meditation. And that is one aspect of mend or of the mind is really working to find what works for you in that regard. And some people will find a particular breath works. Other people will find physically just shaking their body, like shaking out the stress from their legs and their arms is what helps them in that moment. Because when we go through a scary experience, we shake, right? We sometimes shake. But if we repress that shaking when it's scary,
Mhm.
then it gets stored up as tension in the muscle. So actually physically shaking, and there are things called tension release exercises and various things, physically shaking our body can be very beneficial.
Yeah, there's a yoga pose. I think it's like the cockroach or something, where you just shake.
I think there is one, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and I actually I found my body shaking. a couple of nights where I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm cold because of the AC, but it was not the AC. My body was just shaking. And I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, let's go with it. I understand that because when there is a deer in a headlight, that's what they do. An animal is scared, they shake, they
Mm,
shake, they shake to release everything.
exactly
And
right.
when you
So,
talk about, putting your awareness into your body, I did that, but I also imagined my soul entering my body. I called in soul fragments to go and live in my body, to come back to myself.
mm,
And for me, it was also doing like an energetic protection and calling, my angels, my guides, my God, and and having that load being lifted off of my shoulders, knowing that I'm protected, and there is a bigger plan for me, for my family, and kind of putting shields on each family member and on our safe room and on our building, and when I'm not tired, expanding it
mm,
to the country, to the world, and filling it with golden light. Somebody told me even to fill it with a turquoise light because that's very healing and calming. And I know it sounds like a made up imagine like or doing something with our imagination, but because
mm.
we live in I feel like we live in a matrix and we can influence our reality. I totally believe that all that woo stuff works. I feel it to my core.
Of course, yes. Myself also. So I think there's something around what do we have control over? We have control only really or influence over our own consciousness, our own state of being. We can't fundamentally, or we can have influence on the situations around us, but the first port of call is our own consciousness. That if we are anxious, we're going to bring more anxiety into the world. If we are fearful, that's what we start manifesting in our world. So, what can we actually do ourselves is calm our nervous system and relax our own consciousness? And one of the fundamental ways that you've described there, the fundamental, powerful state of consciousness is to believe I'm being taken care of. There is a bigger plan here. And rather than resisting what is going on, all I can do is let go and have faith and have trust that whatever happens, I will be okay. So rather than this will be okay because we don't have control over that, I will be okay. I will get through this. I will handle this. Yeah. I felt challenges before. Israel, Middle East, Palestine. These are all places that have had so many challenges over many, many years, but people come through and come back to normal life and things move forward. And so in that way, that sense of I'm okay, I will be okay, I'm being taken care of, and there is a bigger purpose that I can't see, is so powerful at letting go. And ultimately, it comes down to that word surrender. And surrender is a word which has so many different meanings and so many different misconstructions around it. But ultimately, that surrender is I let go of my resistance, I accept what is happening, and I flow with these ups and downs of life. And that's where we then, the force field around us becomes stronger because the force field becomes weaker when we go into fear states, but it becomes stronger when we let go and say, I accept and surrender.
Mhm.
Let this, let this be. Whatever is happening, let this be, because I can resist and control and be in fear, and that isn't going to help. Then we save our energy. We save our mind. We stop losing energy because every time we are afraid, every time we're angry, every time we're upset, we just lose some energy there. But when we look to conserve it, then we can be at a better place to support our friends, support our family, support the people around us in these difficult times.
Not
Now,
only
that's
that,
also,
yeah, when we're angry, I think it lowers our immune system for about 6 hours. That's crazy.
yeah, fear and anxiety are and anger, as you say, are the emotions that are at the core of the amygdala. And when we experience them, we get an instant drop in our physical immune system's strength. And so conserving that is so important.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we also want to accept our vulnerability and validate it. So if we are finding this hard, naturally, if we are having anxiety, we're having panic, it's validating ourselves, because sometimes we think, oh, I should be stronger than this. I should be there for my children or whatever. But it's validating our own experience and saying, I deserve to be okay with feeling these strong emotions because this is a challenging situation.
Yeah, when I spent some time in India and at Oneness University, and we took a program there, and one of the monks said, "Let the tiger devour you," meaning you want to feel all your emotions, but don't stay there for too long. So it's,
Mm.
and I actually found myself having those conversations in my mind of like, oh, I have to be strong. I'm a coach. I know better than that. I have blah, blah, blah. And then one moment, hold on, hug that
Mm.
little girl, tell her it's okay. We're going through a hard time. It is fine. And I found myself actually doing it and accepting my emotions and accepting that's why I'm openly sharing it, because there is no shame or fear with being scared or feeling anxiety, because then it becomes even more anxiety. You get stressed about having anxiety, and it's just a terrible loop. So it's
Mm.
about taking a moment of self-reflection and just being like, I'm okay. It's okay to feel my feelings. Valid. It's
Mm.
like in Imago dialogue. Do you know Imago dialogue? It's
Particularly.
a relationship tool by Harville and Hendricks, where you just reflect to your partner empathy. Right? Say, instead of
Mm.
you're right or I'm right, you say, yeah, I understand that if this happened at that moment, I would feel the same. I see how you can feel this way if this and this happened to you. And just by having the person being validated, the argument can be disappearing. You don't
Mm.
have to be right or wrong. It doesn't mean that you finish the argument or come to some agreement, but the intensity is being lifted
Mm.
off, and then you calm down, and then you can from a calm place handle things. So I think self-validation works the same way. When I don't have that war in my mind about needing to be strong and or a certain way, or having some thoughts that are not even my thoughts probably, but we're learned somewhere in childhood or through movies or through whatever our society teaches us that we should be, and I put that aside, I can be more grounded and connected and accepting of myself, my reality, my emotions. And then you can calm down, you can do breathing, you can do all those techniques, and then you can
Yeah.
handle everything better.
I love that. Absolutely, Ryan. I really love the way you've explained that. And the way we describe this in the program is we say it's like riding a bike. Yeah. When you're riding a bike, you have that perfect balance. Now, when an emotion comes along, what can tip us off our balance is, first of all, if we go too far to the left and we get too engaged in the emotions, we get overwhelmed by the emotions and we believe them and we get carried away, then we become anxious about the anxiety. We start feeling it more and more, and it builds up and builds up into full blown panic, and then it's continuously with us. So that's when we indulge our emotions and over engage with them. So we go off our bike. So we come back to center. And if we go the other way, which is to repress our emotions, some of us have learned that emotions aren't good. They show weakness. You have to be strong, or emotions isn't something we show as a civilization, as a
Don't be a
community.
crybaby.
Yeah, exactly. Or, and actually this is something that's very endemic, certainly in the British population, funny enough. And if we go too far that way, then we start being unbalanced, where we start repressing and pushing away. And in that way, the emotion doesn't get processed, so it gets stuck in the energy centers of the body. So that's why we can feel intense fear as a heaviness and a pain in the chest. We can feel anger as headaches and migraines because of the repressed emotion. But to come back to center is to say, I neither overindulge my emotions and neither do I repress them.
Ooh.
I validate in the center. I validate how I'm feeling. It's okay to feel these emotions. And I'm still a good person. I'm still value myself and love myself with these emotions. And as you say, from that place, with that self compassion, that self love, it's easier to then engage with the practices because we have validated what we are going through.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And
Mm.
so my mom, it feels like she's repressing her emotions, and she's getting a lot of headaches lately. What can
Mhm.
I do to help her connect and validate her emotions?
I think this is really communicating your own experiences
Mm.
and giving the other person space, because sometimes people don't want to open up. I mean, obviously, we see this in relationships, we can see this in family relationships, romantic relationships, where we want the other person to open up. So we want them to share because we think it's good for them. And that occasionally can work, but generally it's about when we share what we are going through and how we are processing our emotions and how we're feeling, we open up a space for them to voluntarily come forward and say, yes, this is how I'm feeling. Or you may even ask that person, how are you feeling? How does this make you feel? Without too much pressure, because people are clever. They know when, oh, someone's trying to get something out of me here. And then we see, is someone voluntarily going to share their experiences and their emotions? And that sharing is so important, because if we don't share those emotions, it's more likely that we tip off the bike to the right hand side and we start repressing and pushing down the emotions, which then causes long term disease. And we can say that even long term disease is a factor, or some diseases certainly are contributed to by the repression of these emotions. And instead, we want to bring them up and validate them.
With your experience and science background, mostly experience with all the people that you helped heal, do you feel like anyone can heal, and what can prevent one's healing?
It's difficult to say everyone, but I would say the vast majority of people can heal from chronic conditions, whether it's anxiety or burnout or long COVID or pain. We have people who've had pain for 30 years, nothing's helped, and we've been able to heal their pain. And so what we say is, when the doctor has told you, look, here are some pills, but that's all I can do for you, and you still have your symptoms, then this means that it is a software problem. And we empower people to say, you can influence the course of your disease or your condition. You can improve your health and well-being. And we think the vast majority of people can heal, for sure.
Amazing. What are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
Well, we were talking about the 4 pillars of MEND, which we were going through.
Can you repeat them quickly? Because I think
Yeah,
I lost the 4th one.
so MEND is, M is for mind, having a calm, relaxed mind. E is for exercise, so some physical activity we do each day. N is for nighttime, so that means your nighttime routine and your sleep. And D is for diet.
I have so many more questions. Quickly, what's a good nighttime routine? And are you talking about ketogenic diet that is like high in protein and fat, or what type of diet?
So we obviously, there are 1,001 diets out there.
Yeah.
What we focus on in terms of the D for diet is what we call the anti-inflammatory and anti-anxiety diet. So we're focusing on those 2 aspects. And generally what we recommend is cutting out the things that stimulate and trigger our nervous system. So there would be things like the obvious things: sugar,
caffeine, white rice,
white flour, all those usual things, exactly. And then having, obviously, as you say, good quality protein, and making sure that we are having lots of fruit and vegetables that we know are calming to the nervous system, and still having carbs, but making sure obviously they're complex carbs and they are not putting a ton of sugar into your system.
But what we say is MCT oil.
Yeah, good fats, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So all of these things can support our nervous system and can reduce anxiety. And of course, there are many supplements like ashwagandha and various other things that can support calming of the nervous system. But what we also say is that
Mukana, right? There is one that's called Mukana that is really good for the brain.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different Ayurvedic supplements, and but what we say to people is, sometimes we become too obsessed with diet and it becomes an obsession. But actually, out of the 4, MEND, we know that in terms of reducing anxiety, the first 2 pillars, or first 3 pillars certainly, are far more effective. So we don't want to become too obsessed about our diets. Yeah. Instead, we want to have a good, calm mind through our regular meditation and breath work and validating ourselves. E is for exercise. So you've mentioned there's experiences that you are having right now. When we go through stress and chronic stress and anxiety, we get a buildup of cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline in our brain and body. And sometimes you can do a lot of breathing and meditation, but those hormones are in your body and need to be released and relieved to allow the relaxation to occur. So physical movement is so important. And you know what people don't realize is that in the ancient East, in India, when these Vedic techniques were being practiced, there were stages to how we got our nervous system calm. And the first stage was physical activity. So they would do vigorous activity, vigorous movement to remove the stress hormones from the body. So that is the first step. Then the second step would be moving from that vigorous yoga to then calming yoga, like a meditation for the body. Then the third step would be breath work. And then the fourth step would be meditation. And in that chain of events, everything was leading to the outside, to the inner world. So calming the physical body right through to connecting with our spirit and our soul. And along that journey, the exercise component in the environment that you're in is so important because we are building up all these stress hormones. So the physical exercise is so important. And even if that just means running around your living room, if that's all you can do, or like physical stretching and getting your heart rate up, those will help you then prepare the mind to be more relaxed. Yeah. So the physical exercises.
Yeah, sometimes my little one and I dance in the living room. It's really funny. He's like 5.5 and he's like a modern dancer. He makes up all those moves. I'm like, oh, you're amazing. That's awesome. Really special moments.
It's so interesting. We as human beings, we are designed to sing and dance every day. And yet most of us don't do it. So from ancient civilizations, when the sun went down, the vast majority of different communities would sing, dance, and tell stories around a fire. And now television has become the modern campfire of our civilization, where we sit in a chair and watch violence and craziness, right? And so in the evenings, when you are, once again, in the environment that you're in, or any people that are experiencing stress, after dinner, you talked about the nighttime routine, what can you do to uplift your soul and relieve the stress of the day? So dancing, physical dance is fantastic. Singing is fantastic. Singing and dancing at the same time is giving you the perfect combination. Mm-hmm. And then obviously laughing, joy, all of those things help calm the brain and the body ready for sleep. But instead, what are we doing in our modern civilization? We are having dinner, and many of us are watching television as we're even having our food. And then what we are doing is going on our screens and devices, learning about all the craziness in the world, all the negative news, and doing that right till we sleep, and then expecting that our mind is going to have a good night's sleep. So after dinner, we want to turn off bad news. We want to turn off anything stimulating and focus on connecting to our inner joy.
I can't. I have to look at what's going on. When can we get out of the shelter? I know. I mean, in normal days. In normal days.
But even in your situation, there is something that we recommend. And this happened. We did a special event to a lot of our brain retrainers after Trump was elected in the US. A lot of them were having panic attacks and were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And all these kinds of things. And we said to people, there's something very important about how you consume news. Yeah. What we recommend is, I totally agree, you have to keep up with the events because it's very important for your life. At the same time, if we consume it in written form, it is better for our nervous system than videos and TV. And the reason is, when we watch television, they are deliberately attempting to stimulate our nervous system because then they get more eyeballs and they get people watching the news. So when we watch news and videos, our brain can't tell the difference between what's real and imagined. So when some other place is getting, bombed or whatever, our brain feels like it's actually happening to us. So it's re-experiencing the trauma that it doesn't need to re-experience. So what's important is that when we consume news, as much as possible, and I appreciate it's a balance, can we read it instead of watching the news? So we're still informed.
So we just read the headlines instead of reading the article, which I started doing. I'm just like, headline. Okay, got you. Thank you for telling me about that murder and that thing. Uninterested, but usually in peaceful times, I try not to even follow. But now it's almost like a part of the nervous system regulation where you're just like, you are from prehistorical time. We are meant to be afraid of the saber-toothed tiger. Now we see it on the news. We don't know if it's a real tiger or not a tiger. Even with government, that's why I was laughing. Like
Mm.
the right wing, left wing, they're all controlled by the same hand. It's like divide and conquer, and we make such a big emphasis about who's in government. And the end of the day, there is a government behind the government that control all the governments, and it doesn't matter which one you vote. That's just my extreme opinion
Mhm.
on that, but it's all a part of the illusion and the matrix that we live in, and why we get scared from so many things. Now, that's very different from actually hearing the building shaking. So, like you
Of
said, we need
course.
to decrease consumption of all this, all
Mm.
the news, because most of them are fake news. Even now, like I saw a new AI that can create videos that looks exactly like real life. I've
Mm.
been thinking to myself, like, how long did we really have this technology? And do what we see on the news in the last few years, is it even real? Like,
Mm.
what are those programs programming us, and how can we, as a sovereign human being, get out of those subliminal messaging
Mm.
and mind control, and have our own connection to God, to channel and be
Mm.
at peace with ourselves regardless to everything that's happening outside, and live in the eye of the storm,
Yeah, that's
knowing
the
that
eye of
we
the
are,
storm.
yeah,
Yeah.
guided, protected, and loved. Easier said than done sometimes.
Well, that's what we give the idea of. We are all work in progress.
Yeah.
So we are all moving towards that vision and that goal. And sometimes we'll move a few steps forward and we'll few back, and then we'll be tested. We'll be going through testing, challenging times as you are right now.
Mhm.
And all of that ultimately helps us strengthen our resolve, strengthen our sense of connection to whatever we call it, the divine, God, universe, love.
Yes, amazing. Wow, it was so nice talking to you. I really appreciate your kindness, your wisdom, everything you shared with us. You just seem like a really kind-hearted human being. Thank you for everything that you're doing in the world and helping so many people with your training. That's amazing. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful to meet people that found their passion and are living their destiny and are being a light in the world. So, thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Orion, and likewise, the amazing work that you're also doing with your podcast and the work you do with women, I think is amazing. So yes,
Thank you, and thank you, listeners. Remember to keep your mind calm, to exercise, to relax at the nighttime. I also recommend magnesium, it's awesome.
mm-hmm.
And improve your diet. Have a diet that is super good for you, full of good proteins and good fats and healthy carbohydrates. Just take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your mind and your heart and your soul, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.